so welcome to the Municipal Building Commission meeting of April 9th, 2025 at 5:30. For the record, we have myself, Andrew, Jerry, Ed, and Jackie, so we have a quorum. And it says here about approving minutes, but I don't remember seeing the minutes, do you? So why don't we pass that?
Yeah, I thought I missed something, but
No, she was working on them yesterday when I talked to her.
Right, so
For this
so we'll pass that. And I don't know that there's anything, Matt, that you need to tell us about the ongoing projects. I'll give you the opportunity before we go to the short list.
Did we check with him to see if we're ready to go?
I don't care. We're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Anything you want to update us on any of the three water projects or not? You can feel free to say no.
Sure. No, I'll just give a quick update on just a meeting that transpired yesterday.
Okay.
Some of the stuff I had discussed. We're going to look into, we have to take care of sampling schedule for the temporary Wading River
Yeah.
PFAS. So we're going to get the sample schedule in order because there's certain bottles that are needed. There's hold times on the samples that are being taken. So we're going to get the sampling schedule in order. I had given an update before on installing the media for the PFAS filters, that was looking at 6 to 8 weeks. I got updated from Matt Barry yesterday, and it's looking more like 4 weeks. So we'll look to get our sample schedule in order.
Yep.
And then once that's squared away, we'll schedule the media install from there.
So that'll be early to mid-May?
Yeah, I think I think we'll have the sample schedule in order. We're already working on that. So I would say within the next week or two, we should know what that looks like, and then we can schedule the media
Okay,
and have everything on schedule there.
okay. And are we still on track for opening the bids on the permanent one towards the end of this month?
Yes, 24th, I believe,
Yeah.
was what we had saw. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So that looks like that's on schedule. And then the only thing else as far as with Pawtucket, the conversation that we had last week as far as substantial completion and everything like that, and the letter and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I received paperwork on that and have passed that on to Brooke, so that will be in the pipeline for
Okay, good.
for looking at substantial completion and releasing retainage.
Yeah, so what we need to do tonight is to reduce the 8 applicants for the OPM for the permanent project down to 3 or 4, depending on the will of the commission. And then Brooke will notify them to appear on the 23rd here to be interviewed. She will draw straws to figure out the order that they go in. And at the end of that evening, we will vote to rank them 1, 2, and 3. Then we recommend to the mayor that we enter into a contract with number 1, and hopefully Mason will be back by then, and he will take the lead in negotiating the contract with number 1. If we can't reach a contract with number 1, we then have the authority to go to number 2 and negotiate with them.
Okay.
So that's the process.
Okay.
So I will say, who wants to start by talking about what they saw? You want to start, Jackie?
None of them said town. That was very important to me. They all
And I
said
knew that
city.
you would say that.
My top 3 was Ty and Bond, Wright and Pierce, and Apex. And I like Skanska because we've had good experience with Skanska. The others were, for various reasons, either they didn't mention PFAS or they had lots of experience around the world, but not in New England, not in Massachusetts. I eliminated them pretty fast. So
So would you be in favor of 3 or 4 interviews?
preferably 3 because it's less time, but Skanska was 4th, so Skanska is my tuck in there.
Okay. Ed, what do you think?
Well, I think any of them could do the job. To come up with a way to put them in some sort of order, I looked at their response to the RFQ items, and 3 of them named each RFQ item and addressed that. And that, to me, that's how I picked the first 3.
Yeah?
And then the 4th one, if there is such a need, is that Apex. So my first one is Collier's. Not necessarily in the best order, just these are the 3. Skanska, Wright Pierce, that was a 3, and then the 4th one would be Apex.
Okay. Jerry?
As far as I'm concerned, Ty and Bond by far had way more water experience than any of them. They pretty much specialize in water treatment. I had them as number 1. I had Wright and Pierce as number 2. And I had wanted to be Skanska to be number 1 because we've had good luck with them. They've been really good to work with, but they didn't seem to have the qualifications. They were bidding with another company.
Yeah.
But because of their experience, I put them as number 3. Their experience with the city has been good.
And who'd you have as number 4, if any?
I didn't go any further than 3.
Okay.
I don't think there was any need to.
Andrew?
I kind of, along with Jackie, Wright, Pierce, Ty Bond, and Apex. Wright Pierce, they went into the explaining the project. They listed similar projects to Attleboro's, and they specifically called it out. So to me, that put them up number 1. Apex seemed to have relevant experience and was local to the project and provided good details about each previous project instead of just kind of calling them out. And Ty and Bond, they explained their approach, so to me that added some weight. And the rest didn't really give me much. A lot of it seemed boilerplate and not too specific to our project. So
Okay.
I've got those 3.
Your
for that reason.
thoughts, Matt?
I think, as has been stated, I think everyone's capable of doing the job. I think in looking at company to company, you could see that some were more focused on wastewater or other projects rather than water specifically. So I was looking for the water specific stuff. And I think the consensus kind of was, I didn't necessarily do a 1, 2, 3. I thought there was 2 that stood out beyond the others. And I thought Ty and Bond and Wright and Pierce stood out quite a bit. And I did have Skanska down as well. I did make note that they also work with Weston and Sampson, so that it was kind of a collab there on certain things. I had that marked down. And I just wanted to state for the record, like I said, I saw positive things with other company, Apex being one of them. I thought it would be appropriate to mention in thinking that the water department has a consultant who's very experienced in a lot of things. And one of my initial thoughts was to bounce this off of the consultant. I didn't find it appropriate because she has associations with one of these companies. So therefore, I did not do that.
Okay. Sure, understood. I thought that Wright, Pierce, Ty and Bond, and Apex were my top 3. And I put Skanska as number 4 solely because we have had such a good history with them. So I think that Ed, you're the only one who mentioned Colliers, and everyone seems to have mentioned Ty and Bond and Wright Pierce, Apex and Skanska, all in some order. So it strikes me, and again, looking at some of the others, yes, one of the companies was almost strictly Rhode Island. One of the companies was almost strictly wastewater. One of the companies had never, it was Colliers, in my mind, they'd never, their consultant McClure had never done a project anywhere near this big. And to me, the most important things were water, large projects, and PFAS.
Absolutely.
And to me, Wright Pierce and Ty and Bond and Apex checked all those boxes. So, although I'd like it to be 3, because Skanska was mentioned so often, would it be the consensus of this commission that we do 4 interviews and that we do Wright Pierce, Ty and Bond, Apex, and Skanska?
Were you half-hour?
Yeah, half hour devoted to each. Start at 5:30. At 7:30, we are finished with the interviews. We spend the next half hour debating and taking a vote, and we go home on the 23rd. How does that sound?
Should we have the consultant for the city sit in on that meeting?
Yeah, I thought he was going to be here tonight, but I definitely want Matt Barry to be here that night if he...
I did have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I said, you know, going forward, I'd mentioned, are you going to be here and stuff? And I think once we get past this process, I think it'd be easy. I just don't know how much they saw it appropriate at certain times for them to interject their opinion. But if you find it beneficial for them to be involved, I can have them involved at any point.
I think it would be beneficial to have Matt here in the room, both of you listening to the interviews, because in our experience, sometimes the person who finishes first in the preliminary round finishes last because they have a terrible interview. And sometimes companies that, you know, their written stuff wasn't as strong really knock it out of the park at the interview. And so, but the more opinions we get, the better.
Right.
Technically, only us, we're the only ones who can vote, but we value your opinion and we value his opinion. And
Yeah, so I think a short list is a good time for him to come in. The fact that it got to this point,
Yeah.
you get.
And then if he hasn't seen these or the electronic version of these, he can then spend his time only looking at the 4 that we're going to interview rather than the other 4.
Okay.
So I think it sounds to me like the motion is in order to interview 4, Wright Pierce, Ty and Bond, Apex, and Skanska.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. God, we are efficient. Okay, so that's what we'll do. I'll let Brooke know in the morning. And as I said, she will notify the 4 of them. She will draw straws and tell us what order. We will give each of them a half an hour, which basically means 20 minutes for them to tell us why we should pick them and 10 minutes for us to question them. And we'll do that on the 23rd. And for the rest of the commission members, the school building committee is postponed from next week to the middle of May. So therefore, you got next Wednesday off. And then just to remind you that on the 30th, we will be here because the bids will be in, and you and Tata and Howard will have had a chance to review the bids and make a recommendation to us so we can make a recommendation to the mayor as to who to enter into the contract with. So, any other business?
No.
If I could just mention, while we were on the topic at the last meeting, it got brought up, the emergency connection with Pawtucket.
Yeah.
I did have a discussion with DEP today, and it does sound like, I brought up the question on if there were to be a manganese elevated level at Wading River or something along that effect, and we would have leeway in certain situations like that, where if we had a water quality issue like that at Wading River, we would be able to shut it down and supplement it
Yeah.
with. So it does sound like we do have a little more leeway there than originally thought with as far as the emergency situations.
Was that the middle of April or the middle of May? I forget now.
The emergency, May 14th as
May
it stands
14th,
now.
okay. So you think that they would they give us a formal extension, or would they simply say that?
It's not, I'm not talking about the actual in-place situation, but what, if say, you know,
If something happened, you could call them and say, I need to do this, and they'd respond quickly? Is that what you're saying?
I mentioned it before that we could do it and then
Yeah.
notify them, but
Okay.
it seemed like we had brought up the question of, you know, natural fire, contamination, any number of those things. Well, if we have a water quality issue,
Yeah,
that, not a bacteria issue, but if we see elevated, we've had to shut down Wading River in the past due to high manganese. So if we saw those levels again, we could supplement. They're gonna allow us certain leeways with
good,
that.
good. Well, I have to say, you're doing a fine job, and we appreciate you spending your time with us. And I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for your kind words.
Thanks. Motion to adjourn at 5:47.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Have a good evening.